Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the second part of our two-part skills building workshop in science policy writing for advocacy. So before handing it over to our moderator, I just wanted to say a couple words about NSPN and the Advocacy Committee. So NSPN, for those who are new to NSPN or aren't familiar with it, it's an association of civically engaged individuals as well as local chapters. And we focus on providing educational opportunities such as this workshop for those interested in building skills, creating networks, and advancing their careers. So the Advocacy Committee specifically encourages members to actively participate in the policy process and interact with those affected by it. We meet on the fourth Monday of the month. So if you want to check out what we're doing, our next meeting is Monday, November 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can register on the NSPN website or join the Advocacy Committee Slack channel. I'm going to hand it over to Leanna, who is the chair of the Science Policy Committee, and she will tell you a little bit about what they do.
Thanks so much, Jane. Welcome, everyone. So like Jane mentioned, I am the chair of NSPN's brand new Science Policy Committee. And really our goal is to develop programming and skills-based opportunities for people to develop skills in creating policy, analyzing policy, and just interfacing with the government better in general. We meet on the second Thursday of the month. So that actually is coming up this Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So I'll drop a registration link in the chat if you're interested in joining our committee. Since we're brand new, there's lots of opportunities to get involved in event planning and thinking through ways that we can develop trainings for people in NSPN. So I'd love to have you all there if you're interested. And I will now pass it over to our moderator, Monse.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. As they all mentioned, my name is Montserrat, but I go by Monse, and today I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker, Adriana Bankston. Adriana Bankston is a senior fellow in science policy at the Federation of American Scientists. Prior to this role, Adriana was a principal legislative analyst at the University of California Office of Federal Governmental Relations, where she served as an advocate for the university with Congress, the administration, and federal agencies. She's a former policy and advocacy fellow with the Society for Neuroscience and CEO and managing publisher of the Journal of Science, Policy, and Governance. She also earned her PhD in biochemistry, cell and developmental biology for Emory University. Thank you, Jana, today for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me. So let's see if I can share this. So I slowly modified this a little bit from the original slide deck because you all already heard about what one-pagers are from Julianne, so I don't want to give you all that background again. But I was asked to talk a little bit about my career path, how one-pagers can be useful sort of in the real world. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've done in advocacy, which I think can be helpful for this committee too. And different ways that you can impact policy, because one-pagers are one means by which you can do that, but being aware a little more broadly about how policy impact can happen, including through what we're doing at FAS. That hopefully will help you think through your exercise. So try not to take too long, but just to frame this by the fact that I'll be talking a little more broadly about the impact. So one thing to say is I think one important aspect of advocacy is the branding and how people see you. And so I'm going to use my own example of what I would say to a legislator, or this is what I use currently about having sort of a tagline about you, what you are interested in. And so I know a few of you are interested in STEM workforce and education. So just this is my main area, but we'll use this sort of as an example. So what I wanted to show is that this is what's on my website currently. Of course, it could be improved, but the kinds of things that I'm interested in that people know me for, and these are things to think through your sort of future advocacy career, are related to scientific research, education, higher education, training, STEM workforce development. I've done research, training, policy, and advocacy. All these are, of course, keywords you can use. But specifically working on grad student and postdoc issues and advocating for policy change. So these kinds of things I think are helpful when you think about what do I want to be known for, and again, the one pages are part of your sort of branding, but just wanted to preface that by having you to think about this broad question of what do you want people to know you for. My work over the years, and I won't spend too much time on each of these, but I mentioned that I had done research on postdoc salaries, and so I was involved in the National Postdoc Association, where I learned how to write statements on postdoc salaries. So these are also, I'm mentioning these things because I think they're helpful for things to get involved in, or the kinds of things you can be working on. So statements on policy topics related to postdocs. We published a paper looking at postdoc salaries and then pushed for policy change in a data-driven manner. So on the left side here is a research study we did looking at postdoc salaries at a given point in time from institutions and whether they would increase salaries based on a federal labor law. And the right side is we actually got data from institutions and then pushed for change. In this case, the audience was university administrators that would be able to actually work on this. But again, it was mandated by federal law. So just some ideas about how data-driven work can actually impact something that you're interested in. In this case, was postdoc salaries. But research is important when you're working on any documents that you're trying to use to influence legislation or Hill staffers or anything like that. So research, policy. So this is mentioned briefly. I'm happy to talk more about this if anybody's curious about the fellowship itself. But this is where we initially used one-pagers on Hill days with SFN, again, largely around research policy, funding for research, supporting the workforce, and so on. Reading legislation, that's something that you all could probably do in this committee, and trying to figure out what kind of things you'd want to work on or how that impacts your future advocacy. Congressional testimonies, that's another way, and I know this is not a one-pager, but these are all good ways to influence what's happening at the Hill. So I'm just giving you some examples. Testimony responses to NHRFI, that's an easy thing to do. Respond, I think NSPN probably has done that before. Responding to requests for information from government, and then the Advocacy Network newsletter, only mentioning this because a lot of societies have these sorts of summaries of what's going on at the federal level. That's helpful to read and also write. When I started, that was definitely a stretch to learn how to go from writing a scientific paper to a 300-word paragraph about a federal issue. So these are all things you can do to influence policy. Through my work at UC, again, not to go too deeply into this, but in working with Congress, again, we were looking at legislation that impacted university research, lobbying for federal funding. We followed, of course, what the administration is doing. So I encourage you to do that as you're thinking through the one-pagers. Also, what's happening at the administration level influences a lot of what Congress does and what you can lobby for. Working with federal agencies also was related to research funding here, but something else to keep in mind and keep tabs on what agencies are doing if you're trying to go to the executive branch. And different types of events focused on engineering education, science funding, also agricultural research and other topics. All of these meetings we've held on a yearly basis for 3 years in a row. We use the one pagers every time, and virtually a lot of that was virtual, as you can see in this picture here. But we still, Hill staffers still appreciated it, and they were obviously on different topics that related. But really important to leave them with something, even if it's by email, something they can read after you're done with the meetings. Other ways to impact policy, and I know you've talked about sort of events, right? So we organized this briefing with early career researchers to talk about COVID impacts on their research. Resonated very well with Hill staff. Again, we left the document after. RFIs, I already mentioned, this is one that we worked with in 2021, or yeah, 2020. Essentially telling the NSF that they should work on DEI and the workforce. Again, RFIs are a good way to impact things as well, and responding to some of these requests. And then finally, or this is very involved process. We can talk about this in another session maybe. But writing legislative language. So this is again a long process of how things actually happened from writing to actual implementation. And I'll talk a little bit about FAS just for a couple of minutes. So we worked with Representative Lofgren's office, and this may be of interest if you're trying to influence legislation through your one pager, other ways, to write an amendment to what is the used to be the NSF for the Future Act, which was included in the CHIPS Act, to include postdocs in the bill. You can read this press release, and added a 10% of supplemental funding for professional development for postdocs. So this was a big deal. Obviously, this bill took several years to move around Congress and finally became a law. And now the question is, will the money be allocated? Long process. So something to keep in mind. If you're trying to change legislation, it can take years. You have control over some parts of it. But this was a big win to even get this language in the bill. And then just briefly about FAS, because I wanted to bring up the impact question. So FAS has a lot of good resources and memos through the Day One project that I'm working on. This was started in 2019, I think. The idea is to democratize the policymaking process, working with both young scientists and experts to write memos about changes they want to see in the federal government. Both legislative and executive. And so again, good resources to read. Some of the things that happened, there's over 300 memos. So a few general outcomes include creation of fellowships in the executive branch, programs, and also increasing federal investment through legislative changes, including one of my colleagues worked on parts of the CHIPS Act and so on. So FAS is a good resource if you're writing things that you want to see change policy and the way that they write them. It's a really good project too. And so I encourage you to look at the Day One project. So now moving on to the one pagers. I think just wanted to again frame this as a way that one pagers are a way to impact policy. There are other ways. There's different things you can be doing that are more impactful or more immediate or more long-term. One pagers, again, we've used them in a number of Hill meetings to advocate for even things that were less controversial, maybe like research funding and things that were a little bit harder to get through. One of the things to mention is you want to develop relationships with Hill staffers to hear about what they're interested in. Again, this will depend on who's in office and what they think about those issues. So be aware of the political environment. And the sections, I think Julianne covered this, but just a refresher. You want to talk about the organization that you represent. So kind of set aside your personal views here because this is based on who you're representing. talk about the problem, solution, what your legislator can do to help, include a list of supporters, and then contact info. And I'll show you an example. I know Julianne showed a few as well. Main thing to keep in mind is having the bottom line up front, have a clear ask, whether this is a certain amount of funding, a certain program you want to see, when should it happen, how much is it going to cost, how much money am I asking for, so on. So very specific. And keeping in mind also who it's for, what they know about the issue. Again, going back to the research, so do your research before you go into an office. Timing makes a difference. Again, certain things can be done at certain times during the year, depending on where the political environment is, how the political environment is, and where the bill is, if you're trying to influence a bill. Position of that office on the bill, and the way that you make the argument, which we're going to work on today. The structure, again, this is also in the Google Doc that we'll share. But this is based on the UCS resource. So tell me your recommendation in one sentence. Again, the problem you want to address. There's more nuances here about the scale of the problem, the impacts on different constituencies. Be specific, and also how it influences constituents in the legislators' district, which is what they care about. Support your recommendation with evidence. So I'll show you one example, but keep this in mind as you think about this, to have data to back up your question recommendation. The ask, again, should be very clear, specific, trackable. Again, how do you know that it's been implemented? So is there some way to measure this? Include information that's relevant. Again, how much, if you're asking for money, how much is that? How much you're asking for? And then talk about who you're representing, which can resonate with different legislators different ways, and then again the contact information. So this is one example I like to use. This is also linked to in your Google Doc. You can refer back as you're thinking about this. It's very simple. I've used this in multiple classes now, but it's very easy to see. The image is striking. Obviously, you'll know it's something to do with food, kids, lunches. The text is very obvious, right? It's very bright and red and standing out. You can see the different text sizes here. Their recommendation is to vote yes on the school lunch amendment. You can see they have data here in the middle. How many students benefit from the program? What is it going to do? They'll have better health. And what happens if it doesn't go through? So 80% of students rely on this program, won't be able to eat lunch without it. So this is a simple example, but I think it illustrates the ways this can be approached in terms of what are the benefits, but also what are the negative consequences if this doesn't happen. So that's analysis. Then it talks about why this is the only option, why nutrition is important. You can read through this, and why it's important, and this happens now. And then again, your contact. And at the top, Parents for Lunch, I think that's an actual nonprofit, and it says representing 500 local families. Again, very clean, not a lot of words, a lot of color, and very clear what the ask is and where they can go. So I think it's a good example. And then just to remind you of the different breakout rooms that we have. I think Jane will probably go through this, but 5 rooms, or depending on whatever breakdown is going to be. So yeah, feel free to work in groups. We're going to ask you to report back for a couple of minutes on your topic, and it's a good way to learn from other folks. So hopefully we'll have one person who can take notes and report back on what you're working on. And then I think that's all I had. So I'll leave my contact. Feel free to email me and connect on LinkedIn if you want to talk more about advocacy. I've done a lot of things, as you can see. So happy to help in the future. But I'll stop sharing now and let you all go into the rooms. Or I don't know, Jane, if you have other things you want to say.
Yeah. So Gabriella has organized the breakout rooms. I don't know if anyone had any questions right off the bat. We could take a minute for questions. If not, think about them and we can go to the breakout rooms.
Take a few minutes. Yeah. To report back about anything you want to say about how this has been for you and what you've been working on. Maybe since we only have, I think we only have 3 rooms, so we go in order. Anybody want to volunteer for room number 1?
Can you remind everyone what room 1 was, Adriana?
I think it's STEM education and workforce.
Oh, okay. I can also like just briefly share my screen of what, like, just showing what we were working on.
Yeah.
But I was working with Ade Dontan, who had developed this draft to increase access to higher education in Nigeria. So basically, this would mean increasing the budget for higher education and offering scholarships to increase education across federal universities in Nigeria. And specifically, more than half of Nigeria's eligible population is unable to access higher education because there's very poor infrastructure and funding. And we specifically pointed out the medical programs and nursing and then in the surgery departments, which don't have adequate laboratory equipment for practicals. And this really hinders the number of students that they can admit each year. And so the proposal was to increase the budgetary allocation to at least standard 26%, and then at least 50% of that should be devoted to higher education. And we again continued to focus on the nursing and medicine and surgery programs by stating there will be 10 scholarships per program that should be awarded at each federal university, and a little bit more of them would go to the medicine and surgery programs based on previous admissions trends. And we also stated an organization that could help advocate for this proposal. I might mispronounce this, but the Aditokunbo Adibimpe Adironumo Girl Child Foundation, which already advocates for equity in education, particularly for girls.
Cool, very nice. Well, I commented on this that you all had good examples of specificity that people can learn from here. So you talked about which committee you're targeting, percentage of budgets. I think we talked about narrowing down to how much money you're actually asking for, but I think you're on the right track.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, room 2, environment and climate policy.
Do you want me to talk about that, Manoshi, or do you?
Oh, no.
Or
I
Sebastian.
was thinking maybe Sebastian, if you'd like to, you're welcome to talk about it. Otherwise, I'm happy to.
Yeah. So should I share my screen, or how can I? Okay. So here. Yes. So this is the title of the exercise, or the one pager. Fund citizen science intergenerational workshops on potato agrobiodiversity conservation in the Andes. And basically, we are thinking about funding 10 citizen science workshops on potato agrobiodiversity in 3 different regions across the Andes: Junín, Huánuco, and Ayacucho. So these are regions in Peruvian Andes. So the scripted headers we consider four kind of challenges that they are currently facing. Like most custodian farmers are 50 years or older, and younger generations are migrating to the cities away from their homes. Also, agrobiodiversity loss can be mitigated through intergenerational knowledge exchange, like between older and younger generations. And also, agrobiodiversity can be reduced due to economic shocks and climate factors, like, for example, during the pandemic, affected a lot of farmers. And, farmers in the regions are very vulnerable to those events because of how their living conditions. For example, during the pandemic in Ayacucho, many farmers lost on average more than 20% of their varieties. And in other regions, when older farmers pass away due to COVID, their household lost over 50% of their varieties. So they are already losing some of their varieties in many households, which has an overall impact in the whole region, So what we want to do, we want to fund workshops and support our farmers also by providing the resources to monitor diversity loss. So with these workshops, they will be able to monitor biodiversity loss. And also they could benefit if increasing the consumption of Andean products in fairs to generate, well, if you have a diet that is diverse, you can have health and nutritional benefits. And the name of the organization is Aguapan, is the Association of Peruvian Potato Farmers. And this organization represents 9 regions in Peru and 100 farmers in that, geographic location. So that's basically what we have so far.
Good job. Well, this is interesting. Agriculture issues are important, can impact a lot of different groups. I would say you did a good job with kind of honing in on who you're targeting and the number of workshops. I would think about maybe how many, like, is that 10 per year? Or is it like you're doing 10 and then you'll reassess, then you're going to ask for something else? And my main question is, who is this targeted to? Like, who do you want to be acting on this? Did you say that already? Did I miss that? Is it like the government?
Yeah. Yes, it's more like to the government, like the Minister of Environment of Peru.
Yeah.
To provide resources for schools.
Yeah, good. So that's the only other thing. But yeah, good job.
Thank you.
All right. Healthcare and biomedical research, pandemic, public health. So was it room 3?
Yeah, so we were, that was also my fault. We went more based off of like Kalyan's one-pager, which was pretty amazing. So if Kalyan, if you want to share yours and go over it, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Hi. Let's. Yeah, I hope everyone can see it. Okay, so yeah, this is the one-pager. Like, and I attended the first session. I tried to spend some time doing like a small homework, so I created I selected a topic which is about like 6-ppd contamination from the motor vehicle tires. So the ask here is like calling for legislation, like safeguarding, like in California's ecology and the tribal community of 6-ppd quinone contamination in motor vehicle. So the main issue and the problem because of that, like, is like an image showing like a tire with 6-ppd. It's a chemical which is used as an anti-degradant for the durability, the stability of the tires. So like without 6-ppd, you can see like the durability, the stability will be lost. This chemical or this product, like the products containing this chemical has been in use for more than a decade. In almost in all motor vehicles. And the main problem has been found recently. The 6-ppd quinone dust from the tire can able to get into the environment and enter into the waterways and affecting the ecological the system. Especially, it has been found that like when coho salmons were affected by this chemical 6-PPD and their transformative chemical called 6-PPD quinone. So I thought like initially started to do like in kind of state level ask because I also found like in the California DTST like in safer consumer product, they have recently regulated for this chemical as a priority product. And they're working on finding safer alternatives for PPD. And also recently just found that like an EPA is also responding to the tribal traditions because the coho salmon is a major source for the Native American tribes in the California, and because of this affected coho salmons, it also affected the communities around the Californian area. So that's increases in this alarming issue, that it could affect the increasing the physical and mental issues. And one other thing I realized, like, and there are very few studies which have not shown to impact the human health as well. It can able to transfer into placenta, and it can also cross blood-brain barrier. So it would be, and it also leads to liver damage even in newborn. So like the chemical is more toxic and has a possibility of human health risk. So I wanted to pitch it like and ask like an recent bill of AB 418 like in California Food Safety Act, like we are trying to call the legislatures for a new bill that could advocate for finding alternatives and also finding and to engage with the community for betterment of the human health. So I don't like, yeah, we like this was the one like we discussed and I got like in a couple of more like, and everyone participated, and then like they asked about their questions. I think we don't have any numbers to say here, like and we everyone showed interest to work on it and to improve the quality of it, to creating a little more impact, how it affects the economy and how much percentage of people are affected, like, and a little more analysis will give more impact to this one pager. Thank you.
Nice.
Oh, happy. Yeah.
Well, good start. I like that you have kind of a good broad relevance to the problem, kind of who's going to impact broadly and depending on who you're talking to. So it sounds like you're targeting state legislators. You could also work with the EPA potentially, or think about, federal regulations that the EPA could do. So that's one thought, as it's a state action or federal. Yeah, and more numbers would be helpful, but I think you're it's looking good so far. Just needs more details.
Awesome.
And always think
you.
about the audience. I think that's a common thing here. Who are you targeting here? Is it like specific legislator? Is it a committee? I don't know. Could go a number of ways on this one, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I guess, sorry, we went a little over. I wanted to just send you my LinkedIn if anybody wants to connect and talk more about advocacy. I'm happy to chat, and thanks for having me here today.
Thank you so much, Adriana, for all of your wisdom. It was great to have you, and great to spend some time working on our project, or one-pagers. Gabrielle put in the chat, if anyone wants to connect, make sure you share information and keep us updated on how your one-pager goes and how you use it. Thanks for joining us, everyone.